if you're anything like me, you'll find yourself frequenting the same places over and over again as the course of your life unfolds. Now, they may be places that you walk every day when you're commuting, or taking your kids to school, or taking the dog for a walk. Might be a place that you return to on holiday because that's where you went as a child. It could be a particular park that you like to play in when you play your sports or recreational activities. And over time, those places become so familiar that we stop paying attention to them. And I find myself returning to the same places over and over again, primarily because it's quiet, somewhere I can say the things I have to say without being interrupted or disturbing anybody else. And also because it does give me the opportunity to notice the changes in the environment. And I was just thinking to myself, when I came out, I was walking down this path here, how much taller the ferns had grown and the foliage had grown since the last time I was here, which was only about a week ago. I start to question myself as to whether or not I noticed it then. And sometimes I come out and I find myself so caught up in an activity of the day, or in the deciding of the theme of the next video, I don't normally pay attention as acutely as I could. And today I thought to myself, well, I'll just come out, just see what comes out. Because I'm not seeing this as a teaching. Sorry if the camera's all over the place, by the way. I'm trying not to fall down any holes. I don't see this as a teaching. Like, I've got nothing here to share with you that you can't somehow discover for yourself. It might just be that something I say helps you remember. I don't know what that makes me. I say that because I want to make the best I can for myself. I want to make the best content I can make that doesn't fall under the umbrella of some kind of teaching or sales pitch or invitation to do something with me or buy something. And whilst all of those things exist, I'm sure in some degree, my incentive is just to invite you along for a new experience. It may be that many of you just don't come to the parts of the world that I tend to walk in. And the likeliness is I may not come to the parts of the world that you live in, and that's okay. But thanks to the medium of the internet, we have the opportunity to share those things. And when I return to familiar spots like this, I'm reminded not just how the landscape changes as the seasons change. I'm also reminded that I change. Every time I come here, I'm different. Yes, I'm in the same body, but parts of the body have regenerated itself. Yes, I may still have preferences and likes and dislikes, but some of those will change. And some of those have changed since the last time I was here. And also the way I feel has changed since the last time I was here. And there are days I come to places like this and I can take in the wealth of the environment around me, and then there are other days when it feels like I'm in one of those vignettes in a movie where everything is just kind of closed in. And the last couple of days I've had a headache, and partly on my own, on account of my own choices, because I spent a bit too much time on the computer, and it tends to have bad consequences for me. When you have a headache or a migraine or something like that, everything stops becoming really important. All you want to do is just rest or feel better. And that forces you to slow down, see things in a different way. And I'm also finding the more I go through this process of sharing what's here in this moment, rather than premeditating it, even just a small amount, I'm trying to think of a title or a point that I want to make or a story I want to tell, I can take in the environment, and if something occurs to me to share, then my camera's only in my bag, so I can pull it out and do that. And it's a very stark contrast to the world that many of us find ourselves in, where everything is so black or white, and it has to have a label, and it has to have a definition, and we need to know whether or not it's good or bad, if we should avoid it or we should want more of it. And often we look to others or to so-called authorities to determine those things. And much of the time, the people or the authorities that we look to have some kind of interest in us making a decision one way or another. Not many can be said to be truly impartial. And whilst it's difficult to put into practice, it's not impossible for us to hold something in mind without forming an opinion of it. It's not impossible for us to see something as good or bad, but consider that maybe the opposite's also true. It's possible to think of the value of structure, but also sometimes we need to see what happens when there isn't structure. And the mind hates these kinds of questions because it wants to know, is it this or is it this? If it's this, it's safe. If it's this, it's dangerous, and I need to be doing something about it, or moving away from it, or managing it somehow. But maybe it's just another thing. It's just another thing for us to witness. It doesn't mean we need to jump head first into it and wage a war against it, or determine that it's the best thing that's ever happened to us. And, I'm not saying this because I've never done those things. Of course I have. I still do. But occasionally I get these moments where I'm able to take a step back, just enough to see that well, perhaps the opposite's true. And perhaps if the opposite's true, then neither are true. I'm reminded of something one of my very first long-term managers said to me when I was in my, must have been in my mid-20s. He said, if everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. You could say the same about anything. If everything is bad, nothing is bad. If everything is good, nothing is good. It becomes arbitrary when everything has the same meaning attached to it. I'm sorry about the sound here as well. I think the mic might be picking up some of the wind, but I'll do my best to avoid that. It's quite windy today. Again, I don't plan these things. And much of the plant life I see around me, we've got some gorse here, we've got some fern, grass, a few small plants growing up amongst those. I mean, to some people these would be considered as weeds. In here they're just a part of nature. And when you see them from the road or from a few hundred yards away, it's just a sea of green. It doesn't have any independent distinction beyond just plants. Yeah, some of our problems can be placed in the same light. Yeah, in isolation, something that's happening is a problem, or it's a challenge, or it's a threat. But when the perspective is wider, it's just another movement. And these are all the things we can only notice when we take a step back from the life that we're living and start asking a different set of questions. As discoverers, as explorers, as artists. Not of anything in particular, just of ourselves. To lean into the parts of ourselves where we find we don't want to go very often. Definitely not with others. The parts of ourselves that we've become comfortable with, even if they're not actually helping us. To lean into those beliefs and those questions and those convictions that have been imparted to us by our families or our societies or our cultures, that say something is a particular way and that the possibility of it being another way is simply inconceivable. But somewhere in the world, at some point in history, that has been the case, and people have lived or existed with it perfectly well. And those of us who are creatively inclined, at some level intuitively know to ask these questions because we want to understand the richness and the depth of life. And we're not trying as hard to figure everything out, although that happens. It's more a question of expanding the palette with which you can paint, or the amount of notes you can play, or the range that you can use your voice with. And speaking physically or also metaphorically here as well. And so many of us live with the shame of that, with the shame of seeing life differently and not being able to articulate it to the people around us, and therefore we're labelled as dysfunctional. Perhaps the opposite's true. As I said already, maybe neither is true. And that's the interesting thing. Like, we can lean into any aspect of ourselves or our character or our life. It doesn't have to be given a meaning. And just be seen as it is. And that doesn't mean it's devoid of meaning. It doesn't mean it's meaningless. It just means it is as it is. And I'm going to turn the camera away from me because my nose has started to leak. And hopefully you didn't see it. And I have a funny feeling I didn't bring any tissue with me. So that seems to be nature's way of encouraging me to conclude. My time here has come to its end. As always, enjoy the view. Wherever you happen to find yourself, even if somewhere you've been 1,000 times before, there's always something new to see. And if you see something new, or you hear something new when you're watching these videos, do let me know. It's helpful to me, and maybe it will be helpful to others too. So I wish you well, and I'll see you soon.